All right, we are live this Friday afternoon. Today we're going to be streaming on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So, as always, this is a conversation. We want your thoughts, your opinions, your questions. We're going to be talking about remote work with a lot of people out there, kind of being thrust into remote work despite them, wanting to be in an office. Hearing a lot of complaints about how much remote work sucks, and it can. I mean, it can. It's definitely got its drawbacks, but I feel like the positives greatly outweigh any of those drawbacks. So we wanted to have that conversation. We wanted to talk about it a little bit, maybe give you some tips on how to improve your remote work situation. So, but first, this live stream is brought to you by Magento, so we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor. The following broadcast is sponsored by Magento. And I want to take a minute and talk about Magento hosting, because Magento hosting is a lot like hauling stuff in my Tundra here. It's about having a tool that is sized properly for the job. This Tundra is great if I'm on the farm and I want to tow something like my old pickup truck here. But what if I wanted to tow something bigger, like, say, a space shuttle? Well, then this just isn't the right tool for the job. We know this because Toyota did it. This is a publicity stunt to show how awesome this truck is. And sure, it's pulling it, but look at how slow it is. Those people on foot are literally having to slow down to not pass this thing. And that's a lot like Magento in that you need a proper hosting environment. I've been doing Magento as long as Magento's been doing Magento, and in all of that time, I've never seen somebody who can build a site to overcome improper hosting. And with increasing customer demands, slow is just not acceptable. Magento understands the needs of Magento merchants because they focus only on Magento hosting, and they've built a reputation as a premier Magento hosting provider. They've built an incredible Magento cloud hosting platform so that their customers enjoy the speed, reliability, and scalability of cloud servers. And if you geek out about technical details, ask them about how they provide automatic horizontal scaling for free. With cloud hosting from Magento, there's no more worrying about flash sales or Cyber Monday traffic. If you operate a Magento store, then you need to check out Magento hosting. The link is in the description of this live stream, or you can just go to magemojo.com. That's Magemojo.com. All right, I appreciate you joining us this afternoon. I've poured myself just a little bit of this Michter's American whiskey right here. It's good stuff if you have a chance to try it out. So if I'm going to talk about remote work, who else am I going to get on the stream? Like, who is the remote work guru in our space? Like, who is the guy that literally with his own two hands built a shed in his backyard so that he would have a place to be quiet and get away and work remotely? It is none other than Kalen Jordan. Kalen, if you would, first of all, I appreciate you joining me on the stream today. And if you would, can I introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, thanks, man. It's good to, it's always a good day when we're on the e-commerce happy hour. Do you still call it the e-commerce happy hour, or is there...
Not really. I mean, we're just going with the e-commerce-aholic is pretty much what we're... We'll talk about the branding in a little bit, but, it is a happy hour. It's still an hour long. We're still having a good time. I'm still happy while I'm doing it, so you call it that.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. We'll have to talk about that. But, yeah, man, I introduced myself. My name is Kalen, and run Commerce Hero, which is a... hiring platform, mostly for Magento developers. We're starting to branch out a little bit as well. You could get your solution specialists, your Shopify stuff, things like that. But Magento is where my heart is. And what else? Yeah, I've been thinking about remote work, recently, and thought it'd be fun to talk about. It's obviously become a much more mainstream thing with COVID and everything. So there's, I think, just a lot of different aspects, angles to talk about it from. So yeah, that's
yeah, it's definitely going to be it's one of, you should come up with just a canned response that you just use every time. It makes it a lot easier.
That's probably what most people do. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Just get used to the can. And honestly, man, Kalen is the king of just rolling up like he's the talent there at the end, and just let's go live. He'll just roll in. He's like, let's do it. We did some live streams at Meet Magento, New York. Kalen showed up, said, hand me a mic, let's go. Got a little last minute here, but I got some bad news for you, Kalen. I just realized I don't think your big mic's working.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you.
Because
Do you? Is it? No, yeah.
it,
Well, I think maybe I was hearing something else. I don't know if you hit the other mic you've got on your lapel, but I don't think your big mic's working. But you can fix it live. Let's go hot, man. Ain't no problem.
yeah, let's do that. So the funny thing about this, the vMix is like it just pulls from your Chrome settings, right?
It pulls from the browser, yes. So you need to change your mic settings in the browser, whatever it's pulling as your mic. You need to swap
So
the source.
I'm in Chrome settings. I've got it selected as the microphone.
Was it the microphone when you joined?
It wasn't. No, it was.
Okay, you might need to set it and then rejoin.
Okay, should I just refresh the vMix?
Yeah, just refresh. We'll swap over to just me here. And for everybody that's out there, if you would, let me know. There you go. Okay, that's working. That is much better. Now we're good.
There we go.
Now we're good. We got it straight. I just knew I could hear that air conditioner a lot more than I normally could.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you because I would have been very angry with myself if, I put a lot of work into this dang mic, dude, and it was mostly because of that last stream we did. I got a little inspired by your setup, and I had the cloud lift. This is inside baseball. We're getting a little inside baseball, But anyways, I had to get it all set up, so I'm excited. By the way, Richard Bike in the chat mentioned that, so appreciate that, Richard. Richard's my dude on Twitter. We're always bouncing back and forth, bouncing ideas around and stuff like that. Yeah. But hey, also, I didn't get a chance to introduce my selection for today.
What you got? Okay,
I picked up a little Kahlua.
Okay.
I know that you're more of a whiskey kind of guy. Call me crazy, but I like things that I drink to taste good. I know that's a weird concept for you, but yeah, I mean, I know you could drink gasoline like right out of the, with your moonshine and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm a lightweight, dude. I like things to taste good, So, okay. And then I got this little mini, what are these called? Mule mugs. I got this little mini
thimble. I think it's called a thimble.
It's not. This is clearly bigger than a thimble. But are we going to cheers? Are we cheersing?
Let's do it.
Cheers, man. My man. Let's do it, man. Beautiful.
So everybody that's watching out there, if you're working remotely, post in the chat. Let me know where you're working from and whether or not you chose to work remote or whether or not you're having to work remotely currently. And also I'd love to know if you didn't work remotely before, now that you've got accustomed to it, if you were given the option, would you choose that path? I'm really, really interested in, how this is going to change the landscape of people working remotely.
That's a really good question, man, because prior to the COVID situation, pretty much everybody who worked remotely did so by choice, right? I mean, there was like no such thing as like, oh man, I got to work remote, and now that's totally changed. Like there's a whole population of people that are just forced to do it and probably hating life.
Well, I want people to know, first of all, if you've been forced to work remotely, this is not normal remote work. Like, it's not normally this disconnected. The fact that you can never leave your house, that you're trapped there constantly, is not necessarily a normal thing. And so I don't, that's kind of, one of the flip sides of that is everybody being forced home and everything being shut down, or people being scared to go out or trying to socially distance. That's not normal work from home. You definitely, you typically, if you're going to be healthy with work from home, you have a little bit of a routine that also includes a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that, and I think that's important, getting out, having a routine where you get out of the house, ideally where you kind of see people, kind of have a social, socialization aspect a little bit. Like for me, when I go to the gym, it's weird. Even though I don't really talk to that many people, I used to talk to people in the sauna, but the sauna's closed down, so I don't really talk to that many people. But it still feels, some people like to go to coffee shops and things like that. You feel like you're in a social environment, where you're kind of hanging out with peers. Versus if you just go to the grocery store or something like that, you're seeing people, but I don't know if you feel that way, but like there's certain environments where there's like a socialization need that you need to get filled somehow,
Yeah, seeing people is not the same as socializing with people, for
right.
sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Philip in the chat here mentions that remote is okay for a short time, but we're really missing the social time. And I think that's an important distinction. A lot of people's social interaction is through the workplace, or at least a large majority of their social interaction is through the workplace. And so when you move home, you have to find alternatives to that. You definitely have to, in the after hours of work, find more time for socialization. Do you have some examples of things perhaps you do working from home to socialize outside of the family?
For me, it's by the way, where did you see the chat from Philip? I'm trying to make sure I got all the
it's
chat.
on LinkedIn. He's on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I got LinkedIn pulled up, but I might not
reload it. Sometimes it gets crazy and doesn't show the chat updates. Okay. Yeah, LinkedIn's a little crazy with these live streams.
There we go. Now I got it. And if you pause the video, does it stop replaying the comments?
Never pause the video. Not real sure.
I just gotta. Okay, all right. I just gotta make sure I'm dialed in, dude. I want to make sure I'm responding everything in real time. As far as for me, man, I think it's the gym mostly. Before that, I'd go to coffee shops a little bit, but I've been a little more in the zone now where I want to have my big screen and things like that pretty much all day long, and I've been putting in that work, so for me, a lot of people can you get work done at a coffee shop? Because a lot of people I think can, but for me on a little laptop, I'm not very productive at all.
I actually had me and one full-time employee. He was about 30. He worked about 30 hours a week. And so he and I actually worked full-time from a coffee shop for about a year and a half. We had our own little space in the back. I think we were the only, when we quit going, the coffee shop went out of business. So I'm pretty sure we were the only thing keeping them open. Now we didn't make a lot of money because I spent it all in coffee, but it was fun. At least got out, and just had a space, a place to go. Didn't really have I think having a place to go is also, an important factor in this conversation. And back then I didn't have a space in the house to go, and I didn't really want the expense of an office because I didn't need it. So we just ended up going to this coffee shop a few times, hung out, the owner's there, working the coffee shop. He was cool with it. So we just ended up going there every day.
Yeah. I didn't take you for an expensive coffee guy. I'm
not an expensive coffee guy. I'm
not an
expensive sugar guy.
I'm a make my own coffee guy. And I felt like, we were on the same page there. And now all of a sudden, you're spending all your business revenue on coffee. And,
here's a secret that's going to blow your mind. I don't even really like coffee. I'm not even a coffee guy at all. I just felt like if I'm going to be sitting in the dude's place all day, I'm going to be buying coffees.
You got to. Yeah, you do.
Yeah. I don't want to be that guy that's taking up half the coffee shop in the back there. I've got my own private VIP lounge in the coffee shop, and I never buy any coffee.
And the only thing you buy is the cheapest $2 cup of coffee for an entire day.
Just give it to me black, and it just sits there. You don't even drink it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy. But yeah, I think and I think too that, throughout the day, as you're working, right, you have different levels of productivity, so I think that, that's one thing I think about with my schedule is let's say maybe in the mornings I got my coding time, and then maybe you have a block of time for meetings and things like that, and time to go to the gym, whatever. But you don't necessarily have to be the same productivity level all day long. You know what I mean? Maybe that coffee shop, like maybe you stop by the coffee shop for an hour and you're like doing social media or email, something light, I think, you want to find blocks of the day and kind of arrange them, to mix it up a little bit. Whereas maybe if you're trying to knock out like some important code or something like that, maybe you don't do that from the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts, just some options.
Well, I
we're
mean,
just throwing out options.
the coffee shop is interesting because you get out, you have a chance to socialize, but coffee shop, like you mentioned, is not always the most productive environment for someone that's trying to get something done. You do need a space that is dedicated to work, though. That's from years of experience. If you don't have boundaries with the people at home, if you don't have a space where you can go kind of get away that this is a work environment, then you tend to not be as productive. And it goes both ways. You tend to not be as productive. You've got a lot more interruptions. You can't accomplish quite what you could accomplish maybe in the office. But on the flip side of that, you also don't know when to stop working. Like you're always with a laptop glued to you. I mean, you literally, I don't know if you saw the artwork there where I called you shed worker. I don't know if you even mentioned that there, but you literally built a shed in your backyard.
That's right.
That's where he's at
That's
right now.
right.
He's in his little
I'm in a shed.
to to get away, to get out of the house, to separate yourself from the folks
That's
in
right.
the house. So what were the thoughts that went into that?
So we moved into this house 2.5 years ago, and brand new house, separate room for the office. They even put some extra like insulation in the walls. So I was like, oh man, the sound is going to be great. But it wasn't. I hear my kids all the time. I have a 2-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And at any given time, kids are yelling about something. And so, I got the headphones, the noise canceling headphones, which are pretty good, but they don't, and it's funny. Sometimes I just have them blasting, and I don't even want them to be blasting, but I'm just trying to not hear kids crying. So, so basically there's a level of, I could have soundproofed probably if I really wanted to. That probably would have been the simpler approach, would be to soundproof the office. But I kind of want to do this anyways because I've been, looking into tiny homes and all sorts of weird stuff and trailers and stuff like that. So anyway, so yeah, I did this, and it's great. I mean, I haven't even put the insulation in yet, but the sound separation is great, and I'm just in my own little world. I'm in my own zone, and I can focus. I can get work done. Guido said, Kalen has great plywood boundaries now. That's exactly right. But yeah, it's great. Like, and podcasts, recording video, like normally, if I was in the house, I'd have to tell my wife like, hey, I'm doing a podcast, keep the kids in the bedroom and the other side of the house. And then from time to time I'd hear them. And, it's just having your own space where it's quiet, where you can work. Like Pete mentioned in the chat, I like to have quiet, less drive-bys, and less interruptions and things like that. It's critical. It's absolutely critical. And I think that, like you said, you got to have boundaries. Like you got to, like, for me, I think you got to close the door. And if you have young kids, you got to lock the door. If you got kids that are going to just be opening, like I remember at one point I started, and it feels a little weird, right? To like lock the door in your own house. But I don't know. I mean, if kids are running in and out, you're going to lose your mind if
Yeah,
don't have
definitely.
separation. So,
And I mean, it's kind of interesting what you did there because I had a very similar setup for my first work from home. What I did was I actually bought a storage building, a 12 by 24 storage building, and put it in the backyard, and then put heat and air in it. And we had not insulated it to start with until it got to summer, and we quickly found out we had to have insulation. But insulated it, sheetrocked it, and I basically had, what is that, 280 something square feet of space as an office in the backyard. And it was, it was great. It was cheap. And that was kind of my first foray into actually working from the house. So
Nice.
if somebody's forced in, if you're forced to work from home, try to find yourself a little bit of space. Now, sometimes you can have a bedroom and you can work from there. Sometimes sometimes you don't have that option. But if you can carve out a little corner of the bedroom you sleep in, it just something where there's a physical barrier like a door to stop somebody from just interrupting you, without cause. That can make a huge difference in your productivity.
Yeah, it's important. Guido mentioned working remotely while kid and girlfriend are also forced to be at home 24/7 is a different situation. Like you said, a current work remote situation is different from what would be considered normal because you got the kids at home, you got everybody at home. And actually for us prior to COVID, we were all at home anyways because my wife homeschools the kids and stuff like that. So we're, a little crazy just normally, to say the least.
Kalen Jordan's a little crazy. You heard it here. You heard it here first. A little crazy normally.
I mean, if you didn't know that, I don't know. I don't know what you've been up to, but yeah. So now everybody's living through that reality, and it's tough, dude. It's real. I mean, we joke about it, we laugh about it, but it's really hard. Like, when you have your work responsibilities, you want to get things done, you want to have a good relationship with your family, if at all possible, and having everything mixed together all day long is pretty, it grates on the nerves a little bit. So, definitely. I mean, not everybody has a multi-million-dollar video production studio with their company logo on a screen behind them. So
yeah, even here, there's a couple of problems I'm working on rectifying right now that I have here, and then I'm gonna comment on this, and then we're gonna get into some of the conversation in the chat as well. But the two problems I have is I brought the work refrigerator that has all the stickers on it. It looks a lot like this. I brought it and put it. We didn't have a place for it in the house, so it's in my studio here. And the printer, where my children print a lot more, my wife and my children print a lot more than I do, are both in here. So they're in and out 15 or 20 times a day to grab off the printer, grab stuff out of the fridge if somebody needs it. So all of that stuff is going. Like I've got a closet in the laundry room where I'm putting my rack server and I'm putting all my networking equipment and my file storage and the printer, and I don't know what we're going to do with the fridge, but you got to have those boundaries. And I don't mind so much. This room's big enough to where if they just slip in, it's not too disruptive, but it's still something to consider. Kevin in the chat here says home office this afternoon by choice. We are back in some of our 7 offices, about 50% capacity. So I've been in the office for the last 3 weeks or so in PA, and he's having the Michter small batch this afternoon, which is another really excellent choice. I do like their small batch. Kevin, if you would, do you prefer working from home or do you prefer being in the office? You're in by choice this afternoon, but just in general, if you had to pick one and only do one, I'd love to know which one would be your selection. Hito in the chat here, working remotely while kid and girlfriend are also forced to be at home 24/7 is a different situation, though. Glad that's over here in the Netherlands. I mean, that's a good point. Everybody's situation is a little different. That's why we're saying, find some room. Even if they're not a bunch of people at home, find some room so that when you're not in that space, you understand it is time to not be working. It is time to be engaging with the family and doing some stuff. And when you're in that space, be working. But if you've got people at home that are going to be distracting, then you need that space. Like that is an absolute necessity. If you don't have that need to kind of be away from people, then sure, explore the house a little bit. Sit on the couch and work. Sit in a recliner and work. Whatever floats your boat. But it's better to have kind of that dedicated space to maintain sanity.
And it's so important, like you said, when you're with your family, to really be with them. And I think that's something that we as a society at large are struggling a lot with phones, with social media, with work, and even more so when you work from home. You want to make sure people think you're responsive, so maybe you have all your notifications on. Maybe your every email you get, every Slack you get is maybe beeping your phone. And I think, as a society, we're learning how to start to deal with those things a little bit. And, there's a lot of movement around turning notifications off and things like that. I'm a big fan of that. I think that's important. And then, yeah, when you're with your family, to just kind of put work aside for chunks of time, you know what I mean? And otherwise, you're just always distracted by, by one thing or another. So,
Darwin in the chat says he doubts he'll ever be able to go back to work in an office. Love working from home. That's what I like to hear. Like, offices, for the most part, especially in tech, right? Especially if you're in tech, if you're writing code, if you're doing those types of things, something that doesn't require actual in-office interactions, it's just an overhead and expense. Like, I cannot imagine working in Silicon Valley or the Bay Area in general and having to pay $1 million for Kalen's shed that he's got in his backyard.
That's
and
right.
then commuting commuting into the office every day and all of that traffic. I could not
Yeah.
imagine having to do that.
Yeah, it's we're talking a lot about. I mean, the way you titled this show was funny, right? Remote work sucks, right? And those of us that have been doing it for any length of time, we think about the negatives. We think about the frustrations because it's our day to day. But taking a step back, like what Darwin is saying, it sounds like maybe he recently started working from home. It's amazing. Like it's totally amazing. The fact that I've done it for, I don't know, 7-8 years, something like that. And in the past, I had a job where I was commuting from Pasadena, Santa Monica, driving 2-3 hours a day, and things like that. And so it's awesome. Like I think and I'm a huge fan of remote work in many different ways. I encourage companies to hire remotely, not just in the U.S., but to me, as remote as we can get, the better, basically. And there are lots of different challenges along the way, but yeah, I mean, but for a lot of people, it's not at all awesome. Like, I know people that have had really serious issues as far as with motivation, with mental health, things like that. So it's not great for everybody, but for a lot of us, it's like I could never see it any other way.
Definitely. Aviv in the
Yeah.
chat, big fan of video networking while working from home. I try and get 1 to 2 LinkedIn connections per week to just talk shop with and hear about their professional and personal work. Video networking is good. I think that goes so far towards that interpersonal relationship that humans crave. But you've got to have more than that as well. Like, that's a good step in the right direction. I think that can replace a lot of the water cooler talk that people have at work. But you need to go a little further to make sure you're socializing with people on a little more of a personal level as well, though.
I think so, man. I think the broader thing is that, in the past, when you worked in an office and you kind of had socialization, everything built in, now you got to mix and match and figure things out. You got to create your own ways to socialize, and maybe it's not related to work. Maybe it's at a coffee shop. Maybe it's whatever, at a gym. Maybe you're doing a jujitsu class, whatever. And then, you need some in-person, maybe some like video, like, you got to create your own thing. You got to create your own combination of things to socialize. Actually, I tried out this video thing called lunchclub.ai. It basically matches you up with people and you do like a video call with somebody. I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, like, I think I'm starting to think about doing this more. I did a call with somebody I'd known on Twitter for a while, and I was, hey, let's just like do a call the other day. And it was a lot of fun, so I think that's a good idea. It takes a certain amount of effort to be like, hey, let's do a call. But yeah, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. Hito in the chat mentions networking, emailing works great from a coffee shop doesn't work for production deep work for me. I'm trying to think back to the days when I worked from the coffee shop, and we were slinging a lot of code, and it did work. Now, it may have helped that it wasn't a particularly busy coffee shop. There wasn't a
Yeah.
whole lot going on, so that was a nice, quiet, cool place for us to sit in their comfy leather couches and get some work done. So it wasn't
Dude,
too bad for us.
I'm 100% on the same page as Guido. I cannot get deep work done in a coffee shop. Not even close. Like, I just can't. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Combination of like, I need to be in my, me, dude. I need to be in my comfy chair. I need to be posted up. I need my screen, so yeah, but it blows my mind. Like, some developers can just code for like 6 hours straight on a bench in a coffee shop, and I'm like, I don't get it.
James at MDOQ says MDOQ is making remote work much easier. Check them out. So if you're looking for remote work, hit them up. I don't even know what is MDOQ.
I'll pull this up. I got you, brother. I'm gonna pull this up. We're gonna figure out if this is just a low grade spam shot, or if this is.
I don't mind. Hey, as long as you're watching low grade spam away in the chat, I don't really care.
We'll take it. We don't mind. We'll take it.
Don't get out of hand. But apparently automates the most common task in Magento, removing the need for experienced developers. So when you say you're making remote better, like, you guys are over in the UK, is that right? So how remote are you getting, right? If somebody in this chat is looking for an opportunity, what kind of roles are you hiring for? And geographically speaking, where do they need to be? So post that in the chat. Happy to advertise for anybody that's looking.
Yeah, this is actually kind of interesting. I think I may have looked at this in the past. I do like the idea generally. Like, they're like on LinkedIn page, their headline is removing the need for experienced developers and enabling juniors by automating the most common tasks in Magento, which I actually think that's a really cool value prop. So yeah, we got to dig into how that kind of works. I think I have talked to the dude about this, but
hey, dude, if the dude is watching, hit me up.
Where's
me
the
and
dude
Kalen,
at?
me and Kalen gonna bring you on. We're gonna do a live stream because we want to know more about how you're automating basic tasks in Magento.
It was Aaron, Aaron Moss that I chatted to a little bit about this. So
all right, so James, if somebody there wants to talk about it on the stream, hit me up. I'm looking for a stream for next week anyway. Jackie says, I hate coffee, but it would be tea. So I understand that. And Jackie's question is, do you find you work more hours when working from home? I do. My boss used to come into my office and round any stragglers up to get them out the door at the end of the night, and encouraged us to leave our laptops in the office. Totally agree with the separate workspace from home. Yes, I 100% work more hours when I work from home, but I own the business, so it's okay for me to work more hours, because a lot of what I do, unfortunately, is not considered terribly productive. There's a lot of figuring out and trying to understand where we're going, and just a lot of follow up and email and accounting and all sorts of nonsense that no sane person actually likes to do. So what I do is I try to be productive in the mornings, and then in the afternoon, and sometimes in the evening, sometimes on weekends, just drudge through the never ending stream of stuff I need to do to try to make the business a little bit better, or to keep it chugging along. But I think employees tend to oftentimes work a little longer as well. You don't set those boundaries. That's why the space is important, because when you leave the space, you're not at work anymore. You still go to work. I think that's an important distinction, is that you go to work. Even if you're at home, you're going to your workspace.
And I think that there should be an expectation. I think Basecamp as a company is working to change these expectations, but I think there should be an expectation that when you work from home, you're responsive to work communications during certain hours, right? But you're maybe not going to get notifications over the weekend or in the evenings when you get an email, when you get a message. And a lot of people do like to get those, right? And at the end of the day, it's your call, right? But I think that having that as a default is probably like a healthier default. And then if you have a reason why you need to get those notifications in the evening, okay, maybe you're a sales role, maybe whatever. But yeah, I think that I've been doing this for a while, so I kind of have my schedule dialed in. But for people that are new to it, you want to make a good impression on your coworkers, your boss. You want to be responsive. So I think you're going to have a level of anxiety of making sure you're there, you don't have the dynamic of like butts and seats. So you want to make sure you're responding to every message that comes in and things like that. So I think that, yeah, a lot of people are going to overwork, and it might not be the most productive time that you're spending, but you just feel like you have to be on, you have to be available. So yeah, I think that's an important one.
Well, it's an important point that you bring up as well that you touched on a little bit there. It also depends on the company you work for, right? For us, being fully remote, like we're fully remote. I shut down the office in February. We do not have an office at all anymore. And we may have one at some point, but I don't expect it to be an office where a bunch of people work. It'll probably be a studio or something where we produce content and the content team works from there or something. But, for us, it's really about, have you been productive? Is stuff getting done? Are the tickets finished? Or tasks getting accomplished? Stuff like that. But for a traditional company that is not used to remote work, the tendency is to over respond or be a little more sensitive to pings or notifications or messages because you're trying to prove that you are engaged in working. Whereas if you were at the office, you might just check your email at noon and then respond and you got a bunch of work done. But at home, maybe you're checking it every 15 or 20 minutes just to make sure you're showing that you are working. And so, as employers, we have to get better about how we measure productivity of employees, because just because you're in an office doesn't mean you got a bunch of work done. You are, honestly, I would argue the opposite. I would argue that you could get a lot more work done in a properly set up home environment. You didn't waste an hour of brain cycles and energy trying to get into the office. You didn't sit around for 30 minutes talking to your friends and hanging out and saying hey to everybody and how was your night and all that stuff. You don't, get up every 45 minutes or so and sit down and talk to somebody, although you do need to be getting up regularly and walking around. But, I think you could have much more productive time and still work the same amount of hours, or you could get the same amount of work done and work fewer hours if we were actually just measuring productivity.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that companies can do to be proactive about that. I think a lot of times it's like, hey, do you have a laptop, whatever, and then the conversation ends there. But do you have a dedicated space? Do you, maybe co-working stipend, whatever. There's a lot of things that aren't really expensive that can be done, or at least discussed, or expectations set to make sure you have a good environment, in the same way that if you're setting up an office, you're going to put a lot of time, effort, and money into making sure that office is a solid environment. And I think really cheaply, there's some things you can do to make sure everybody's kind of set up for success in their home office. So I think there's some things that can be done there,
Definitely. All right, so we've got Philip in the chat, but there's some very positive things with going remote, learning to have somewhat complex workshops online. Not sure I exactly follow what you're saying there, but there are definitely some challenges with a lot of jobs going remote and figuring out how to do things remotely that you used to do in the office. There's definitely concerns about company culture and stuff like that, but I think those are just problems we haven't necessarily figured out how to tackle yet. Not that those are problems that can't be tackled remotely.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you, TJ, and about you talked about measuring productivity. I'm kind of curious about this, because as an agency, as a solutions partner, I think there's a lot that are used to an in-office dynamic, and then making the switch to remote, you got to figure out, how am I measuring productivity? Obviously, you got billable hours, so
right.
Probably comes down to that in one shape or another. But are there specific like challenges you've run into with like how do I really get at measure productivity? Like, yeah, okay, fine, everybody's billing a certain amount of hours, but what if a lot of hours are getting, bounced back or whatever? Like how have you? Because you're pretty deep into this remote work thing for many years, and I'm curious how you've you
Well,
know
there's two
iterated on
types
that.
of roles that we have, and being a technically focused agency, most of our resources are billable, and so that's obviously part of what you need to be tracking is how much billable time is getting generated, but also with those tickets they're generating, is the amount of effort they're putting into them commiserate with what was expected to be put into those types of tickets. You got to be. It's also one of those things where you've got to be careful because you can find people that just pad stats or pad time. They spend an hour on something and then they say they spent 4 hours and took the afternoon off. So you've got to be tracking those things. I don't know if you can do a great job of tracking every little thing like that, but those types of problems usually work themselves up to the top really, really quickly. And so, be sensitive to who is actually providing, they're providing value in what they're doing in the company. And so
Yeah.
that's easy with billable time though. You just track billable time. You can get more in depth, but that's the magic number. With those roles that aren't billable, it becomes a little more complicated. For us, it's about setting measurable goals, and are we making progress toward those goals, and the progress that we expected to make toward those goals. And so, as long as we are doing those things, as long as the business is growing, as long as the business is progressing forward, that's all that really ultimately matters, is that everybody is, they are contributing to the betterment of the organization in our goals, and that's to service our customers better. And so as long as everybody's pulling, it's fine. If you have a good company culture and you're hiring the right types of people, they'll quickly point out the ones that aren't contributing to those goals. Now, I'm not a guy that's, we like to keep it kind of low drama, low stress. I'm not one of those people that wants to try to trick people or pressure people into working all the freaking time. I'm not one of those people that wants to grow just for growth's sake. I don't want to just squeeze every dollar out of the business I could possibly squeeze out. So, we want to grow measurably. We want to grow slowly. We want to get the job done. So as long as we're setting goals and we're actually moving toward those goals, I'm more than happy to do that. Where I get frustrated is if we go months at a time and we've got the same problems. We didn't rectify any of these problems. Business is how you solve problems. You're always going to have problems. The only way you don't have problems is if you go out of business. And so you're always going to have problems. I just want new problems next month than what I have this month. And so as long as we're doing that, I'm satisfied. Now, some businesses are trying to be super aggressive for whatever reason. Maybe they're trying to go public, maybe they're trying to sell, maybe they've got, shareholders or investors that put a lot of pressure on them and they have to grow really rapidly. But you just kind of have to know what you're getting into with those businesses and know that they're going to lean on you pretty hard. But those businesses are going to lean on you hard whether you're in the office or whether you're at home, regardless. But you just have to be a little more mindful of setting boundaries with those types of companies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Kevin in the chat posted office. I think that was in response to if you could move back to the office, would you?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people in that boat, man. That honestly, I kind of feel like 20% of people thrive in a remote role and would choose to do it. I don't know if it's 80%. I think it's whatever the actual number is. You know what I mean? I think it's because you got to be a little different. You know what I mean? To really day to day for years, work remotely and make it work. But then again, tools are getting better. Tools are maturing. People are becoming more used to it. So it's obviously becoming more common, but I think there's quite a few people that would be like, dude, let's, love to get back to an office.
Well, and I understand it. I do. I understand it. A lot of people love the social interaction. They love the camaraderie that can come with that, and being on the same team. Whereas, if you're remote, sometimes it's a little disjointed. I think it's harder to be remote at a company that is partially remote. I think if a company's not all in on the remote, you do see the camaraderie and the things going on and the team building and the relationships being forged, and you're on the outside looking in on those things. You may miss inside jokes and stuff like that. That can be a lot more difficult than working for a company that's fully remote. But I fully understand the desire to be in the office. I was one of those guys forever. I didn't choose to be remote because I just thought this was a great idea and we should go down this direction.
You're a very personable person. Like, I can imagine you liking to be around people and stuff like that.
Yeah, I went remote because I had to. Like, I was forced. I was drug kicking and screaming into remote work because I'm in Opelika, Alabama, and I'm not moving. I'm not moving to Atlanta. I'm not moving to Silicon Valley. I'm not moving to Charleston or anywhere where there might be developers that we could actually hire.
It's not a big Magento meetup in Opelika.
There's no Magento meetup in Opelika because there's like 2 Magento people in Opelika. And so there's no community here. There's no bringing. You could hire juniors. There's a good college, good university with a great computer science program here. So, there is the possible, and we may do that someday. If we get to the size to where we can train people, I really had thought about doing like an incubation program for e-commerce Magento developers, bring them in, have them work in the office for a certain time period, maybe their first year after college, and then you go where you want. You go where you want and you work, continue working for us. Doing something like that. But at the time when we were growing early on, I needed senior level guys. I needed leaders, and I couldn't find them, and they weren't going to move to Opelika. I couldn't afford to pay them to move to Opelika. So we just go after the best talent regardless of where it's located. And we started in the U.S. It's like U.S. only, speaks good English, works our time zones. But then, it got to a point to where it's like, what's the logic in that? If they speak good English, if they know what they're doing, and they'll work our time zones, where do I care where they're at? I don't care if they're in Austin, Texas, or if they're in Australia. If somebody wants to work the third shift in Australia to do e-commerce development, I could care
God bless
less,
them.
right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it may be hard. Like, Mike could do better and find a job in their own time zone. But if they don't mind it, then I don't care.
Yeah, yeah, and it may be a question mark as to whether long term it's going to work out, particularly in a real big stretch like Australia or parts of Asia. So you got to keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the world's becoming a lot smaller in many ways, and I think that's a good thing. We're able to work with people that are in different places, countries, time zones, and I think it's really cool.
Absolutely. Jackie's got a great point in the chat here I want to make sure we make as well. She says, I love working from home, and you need to let the crazy become part of the day. People love seeing your kids and pets. Makes you more relatable, I think. I use a lot of hand signals with my family, and I also keep the door open when I'm not online so I can see them coming. If the door is closed, they know not to come in unless someone is bleeding. Choosing to sit in on a webinar is enough human interaction. I've found that people are more present on LinkedIn with this quarantine as well. But the great point there that Jackie makes is embrace the crazy a little bit. Embrace. I had an interview with a gentleman the other day, and he had his son with him. And it was, I think he had two children, but one in particular really wanted to be on the interview. And so he was, peeking in behind him and coming over and interacting with the camera and having a good time. It was fine. Like, it literally had no impact on the interview whatsoever. And so, it's one of those things where people understand when you're working from home. You need to be as presentable and professional as possible. So maybe a little, like Jackie's done, a little training with the family on when it's appropriate to come in and when it's not is fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want someone coming in and disrupting a client call or something like that. But, you've got to embrace it a little bit and not stress out too much when things go awry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing now, is we're literally all working from home. So in the past, it was kind of like when you were working from home, you had to do your best to make it seem like you were not working from home. Like your kids weren't there. You had to make everything seem as sort of professional as possible. And whereas, now that we're all doing it, it's sort of there's a level of, it's acceptable to have your kids walk in. It's fun. It's cool. I think to the extent, you can do that, without being too distracted, I think that's great. And I wish I was better at having my kids in and out, and things like that. But I get so distracted, when my kids come in and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm working right now. And, that's kind of my personality. I'm not saying that's ideal. I think that if you can have your kids come in and out in a way that's not distracting and stuff like that, I think that's great. I think that's a lot of fun.
For mine, we don't really do hand signals. What I figured out with mine is the door for them to enter is right over here. It's right in the corner of my peripheral vision. And so if I'm on a call or I'm talking to somebody, it's here, and they can only see this far, and the door's 10 feet that way. So if they open the door and look at me and I don't look back, then they know. Just, close the door and they'll roll on about their business, right? If it's an emergency, break on in. But it's kind of like that. Like they just, every once in a while, I'll notice out of the corner of my eye, they'll just open the door and they'll just be sitting there. And they'll sit there for a little while, and then they're like,
and you're just,
and then the door will close and they'll go. Yeah, I'm just looking, or talking. And they'll just close the door and go back in there. And then when I'm done, I'll go, did you need something? What was the deal? That kind of thing. So seems to work. Yeah. Gary Smith says he misses having his manager stop by his desk to chat about cover pages on TPS reports.
That's hilarious. Dude, I literally have to keep refreshing the LinkedIn page just to see
Gary, honestly, I didn't see Gary's his comment. He was laughing at Gary's comment, and I was like, I didn't see a comment from Gary, so I had to reload. LinkedIn has a lot of problems with the live streams and the comments.
Dude, LinkedIn, guys, if you need some feedback, come talk to us because you need some feedback. Shout out to Gary with the TPS reports.
Jill's over here looking in the door now. She's watching the live stream.
Okay, gotcha.
She's looking in the door here now. Yeah.
You made the mistake of looking over.
I looked over. It was a problem.
You gave him the signal. Yeah.
That shows how much of a delay she's got here watching, though, because she heard it and came running in here to open the door.
Right.
But yeah, LinkedIn has a lot of issues. So we've got just a few minutes left here. I'm trying to go through and make sure we didn't miss any important points or comments. If you would, everybody, while you're here, real quick, post in the chat if you have any must-dos or must-haves for working from home, so other people that are watching this might read through the chat and find those pointers, because we tried to touch on the things that make it work for us, but we definitely didn't touch on everything that can help you have a more successful work from home experience. So I'm going to read through the chat real quick just to make sure we didn't miss any. Igor says, I feel like many people are far more productive while working remotely. I see it in my business.
Igor is right around the corner from me. He lives in the same town as I do. We're going to play Frisbee golf soon. So shout out to Igor.
All right. In Georgetown, that's where you're at, right? Georgetown?
I'm on the border of Round Rock and Georgetown. He's in Round Rock. And we had coffee recently. Speaking of socializing and stuff like that. So we're going to hang out, man. Shout out to Igor.
Darwin over on YouTube mentions the cost savings alone is worth it. Gas, vehicle maintenance, clothes, and lunch all add up. I already pay for the overhead costs to run the business from home. It's a great point. We had an office. Now, I had an office in Opelika. It's not ridiculously expensive, but I shut down the office. It saved me $2,000 a month. That's pretty much the budget I have for this studio, for editors, for, things to help create content. That's why, if you noticed in January, the content level started going up a little bit. We put out a few more videos that are getting thousands of views and not hundreds. So we're gonna
awesome.
continue to level up over the next several months, just from the money I saved from the office.
And
so
when
it definitely
you take
helps.
a step back and think about it, in the day and age that we're in, with the importance of digital marketing, like that's such a smart investment, versus paying for an office just because everybody needs an office, whereas we don't. That's a much better place to be putting your money, and it's impressive. Everybody sees the quality of your videos, and everybody's like, "Dang, dude, TJ's killing the game."
Yeah.
You know?
Crushing it. Crushing the game.
Crushing the game.
Crushing 2020 instead of it crushing me. That's what I'm trying to do. It's not working too well, but it's pretty. We're coming close.
Some days are better than others. Yeah.
Some days. Richard says he hasn't filled up his gas tank in 2 months. I can't say I can go there, but I did buy a truck in, what was it? It was about 9 months ago. I immediately after I bought it, I road tripped to Austin, Texas, and back. So I bought it just a little bit before, what was it, Mage X or whatever they called the what used to be Mage Titans.
Whatever the hell they're calling it now.
So I road tripped out there and back. I've been to Atlanta a time or two in the truck, and I still just rolled over 10,000 miles in it. So, basically day-to-day driving is nothing almost. Outside of a couple of trips to Atlanta and a road trip to Austin, Texas, and back. So it's great for wear and tear on vehicles, gas costs. That's the reason I bought the truck, is because working from home, I don't drive a ton. So the fact that it gets like 0 miles to the gallon is not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah.
Darwin, wife works a normal job in banking that has been virtual since the pandemic started. Set her up with a full home office. Only problem is she is working way more hours, about 14 hours a day.
Oh, God.
It was a right call, Darwin, but there needs to be a cutoff. Like you gotta be, if she normally got off at 5 o'clock, then she should be getting off at 5 o'clock. Now, there may be a lot more time early on to catch up, and figure things out, and how does this work, and how do I access these files, and there's a lot of unproductivity early on when everybody's forced to go home, but that needs to normalize, or you're just going to go crazy, or she's going to go crazy, and so that's not a healthy way of doing it. Inseparable generation. Okay, I've been trying to start an e-commerce business for a year.
You skipped over Philip. I
Okay.
like remote with both colleagues and customers, but the team feeling with lunch, padel, I'm not sure what padel is, bowling, and other activities. But sure, hire me, TJ. I think this goes back. That's a great point, right? Like you're hanging out with your team, you go out to lunch. I used to love doing that. And I think it comes back to, you got to create that for yourself, right? Like it used to all be baked into your work, and it was all sort of figured out for you. And on the flip side, you sort of had to hang out with your lunch, or with your work coworkers, right? And maybe they're not the people you connect with the most on a social level. So now, for better or worse, you got to create that yourself, right? You got to go out to lunch yourself and hang out with people. But it's a good thing, right? You can figure that out. You can find the things you like to do, but you got to create all that for yourself, Yeah,
it's a little harder now. That's one of the things that makes doing this during a pandemic much more complicated, is that you couldn't just go out to lunch with folks, or that's not the best thing to do. So once things normalize, like Kalen said, you've got to find those activities, and it could be even better, because you might go a little further away to a restaurant you wouldn't be able to get to in a normal lunch hour, because you could come back at 1:30 instead. Or it doesn't have to be somebody that works at your same company. It could be just your general friends or someone else. So definitely.
At the end of the day, you got more options to create sort of the life that you want to create for yourself, whether that's social activities, things like that. And it's harder because you got to do it all yourself. But on the flip side, you got more freedom to create what you want to create. So, it is what it is.
It definitely is what it is. All right, I'm going to get to this one's not really about remote work, but Inseparable Generation had an e-commerce question, and this is an e-commerce crowd. So
Hey,
I've been
let's
trying
do
to
it.
start an e-commerce business for a year, but I simply cannot afford the monthly cost of these e-commerce platforms from South Africa. I get a monthly salary of 250 to 300 US dollars a month. That's going to be tough. What you need to do, you're going to have to work your ass off. You need to learn to code. No, seriously. I mean, you're just going to have to. If you don't have any money, you're going to have to do a lot of this yourself. So
Yep.
you're going to have to learn to code. If you can't, Wix or something like that would probably be one of the cheapest ways of going. But you're going to have to pay a small fee for that. See if you can afford that. If you can't afford Wix, then you're going to have some sort of hosting provider. So Wix is probably going to cost you less than a hosting provider. They're not gonna have the most robust e-commerce, but you don't need to worry about robust. You need to worry about making sales. You're gonna need to spend every dime you can scrape together on marketing. Well, you're not gonna have a lot of dimes. So what you're going to need to do is get a very basic e-commerce site set up on the cheapest platform you can possibly do, whether that's WooCommerce on
Should
some
probably go
cheap hosting
WooCommerce.
plan, something like that, and then learn to update it and manipulate it yourself, and pull the design together. Figure out how to source your products. I don't know if you're drop shipping or something like that, but figure those things out. You're going to have to build a really good social presence. That's probably how I would go, because that takes a lot of time, but not necessarily a ton of money. And you're going to have to try to scrape together a few dollars for marketing. Best advice
here's
I
the
can give
thing.
you, but go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. Oh, so I would say here's the thing, man, too, and I didn't mean to laugh in a disrespectful way. I think definitely respect that hustle of starting things. I mean, I think at that salary level too, if you have skills in the e-commerce space, maybe you should be working for somebody to get started, right? Maybe you should. I mean, I can think of a lot of people. If you have skills in digital marketing, in anything related to e-commerce, Magento store administration, Shopify administration, anything at all, you might be able to get up easily into the 1,000, 2,000 a month range working, for a company. And then that'll give you maybe a good foundation to work off of. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's all I wanted to say
Definitely.
on that.
It's a world market. So if you're getting world class skills in something that applies across multiple markets, then that is a way of raising your income. Is that you can go work for somebody in a different market. I don't know what the time zone difference is between South Africa and say Europe, but there are a lot of places in Europe. Is it a big time zone difference?
It's significant. I mean, South Africa definitely from us is pretty far. From Europe, it's
From
probably
us, yeah.
not quite as far. But man,
Okay.
there are South Africa, New Zealand, obviously Australia. I mean, they're out there, But yeah, probably it's not too bad to Europe. It's probably like 8 hours or
Yeah,
something like
it's
that.
10
Probably
it's 10
reasonable.
p.m. So 10 p.m. That's what it is in the Netherlands right now, right? Hito, if you're still watching, let me know.
Oh, that's not. It's not bad at all.
So it's not bad. So you've got the same time zone as a lot of Europe. So what I'm saying is if you were providing some sort of e-commerce, if you had some e-commerce skills, then a company like mine would hire you to do some social media marketing or some things like that for and paying you 4 times, 5 times, 10 times what you're making now is a bargain for us if you're as good as somebody I could get locally.
Yeah.
So, but you want to find a company that's kind of in your time zone. You don't want to be working all night doing that, but that can also provide a little more revenue. If you don't have those skills, go out and get them by doing what I said, and that's working your ass off. So finishing out the chat here, we're already about 6 minutes over. You got a few extra minutes here, Kalen, just to make sure we get everything addressed in the chat.
Dude, I'm you know me, man. I'm golden. I'm really impressed that Daniel Sloaf is in the chat here. Daniel has done a ton of work, has worked on some really interesting projects, open source stuff in the Magento community, and is an absolute beast. So he says in the chat, I've been remote for maybe 9 out of 12 professional dev years. Those 3 years in the office destroyed me. Then again, I don't have kids. And he worked for JH, and JH is is one of these companies that has, I believe, a great office and a great in-person culture. you know, and at the
Agreed.
same time is, I believe, starting to hire more remotely as well. And so you got that combination of in office and remote, which almost everybody is dealing with that in one shape or another. So
Definitely. We got a lot of conversation going on here, just kind of helping Inseparable Generation. Let's see. Gary moved over to YouTube with the cool kids. We've got conversation going both on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Um, Gary, I seriously haven't worked full time in an office since late 2014, and do not think I could go back. I mean, I sometimes I think, yeah, that sounds like fun. It sounds fun to be in an office and going back to an office. But then I think, well, I'm going to have to wake up an hour earlier to get there, and it's going to be an hour later when I get home. And I'm like, what would I be sacrificing with those 2 hours? And so I just don't know if I could pull the trigger on it either there, Gary. Daniel providing some good insights to Inseparable. And Inseparable, as you're going through this, hit the subscribe button for anybody watching. If you're into this kind of content, hit the subscribe button. Normally we're talking e-commerce, not so much remote work, but hit the subscribe button as you go through your e-commerce journey. If you have particular questions, post them. Post it to a comment in a video. Go to Jamersan.com, submit the contact form, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not going to do the work for you. You're going to have to do the work, but come with informed, educated questions, and I'm happy to help you any way I can, figure this thing out and get your business off the ground. And he specifically mentioned looking at both BigCommerce and Magento. Shopify looks to be too expensive with all the apps and theme price. 20 to 30 US dollars is food for a week. It's a lot of money. Like I said, don't go SaaS. Don't go SaaS. Don't go Magento. Start smaller than that. See if you can go Wix, or find somebody that provides some sort of service in your geography that is a lot cheaper. Find a cheap hosting environment. Download something like WooCommerce and WordPress that you can work with. Find something cheaper that you can afford. But you can also just sell on, if you could come up with products, sell on Amazon, sell on eBay, Facebook shops. Just go to Facebook shops and put your products on there, and try to sell that way. I mean, there are ways, again, I don't know about your geography or limitations with any of those things or platforms, but there are ways to make sales that don't necessarily require you to have your own site until you can generate a little money to support it. So figure those things out. Craigslist, if that's big over there, start hustling things on Craigslist. Like, find a way to make the money. No excuses. Figure it out. Yep. But I understand it's expensive. So don't not feed your family or yourself to do it. But, do what you've got to do to figure it out. All right. So let's see. Going through... Gary says he does. He said Nexus does WooCommerce plans at $20 a month. That's a lot of money. Again, so if you're if $20 is feeding,
is Gary getting in there pushing Nexus on everybody? Is he didn't mention Nexus? He
just said as long as he said we do WooCommerce. Okay. He works at Nexus currently, so I'm assuming we is Nexus. But I'm okay with. I am okay with you pimping your wares in the chat as long as you do it respectfully and you're trying to help people.
That's true. Yes. Fair enough. Absolutely. Don't worry, dude. I laughed with you because I know that salary is a joke, but it's what people are willing to pay. Yeah, I honestly think at that, like you said, TJ, I can think of a lot of people, if you got any level of skills in terms of anything related e-commerce adjacent, you should be able to get up to $1,000 a month relatively quickly, I would think. So that might be a good initial goal to have. And then take that skill set and use it, leverage that to build your own store, So
absolutely. All right, so I think we've got through most of the conversation. If I missed anything over on LinkedIn, you guys in the chat that you really want me to address or talk about, let me know. Or excuse me, on YouTube, let me know. I'm going to jump back over to LinkedIn. We've got a few tips over there. as well. And it was, let's see, Jeff jumped in at the bottom there. I'm going to start at the bottom, work my way up. Signed on a little late. What do you think about that Michter's American whiskey? I think it's pretty good. I like it. I've got their, what is it? I've got their bourbon over there as well. Honestly, I might like this American. I might like it a little better. I might like it a little better. It's got a pretty good flavor to it. Like it almost tastes like it might have a little rye in it. So it's got just a little more you might expect from a bourbon, but it's pretty good. It's pretty smooth. Goes down really easy. And Kalen lived in L.A. for years. You're right. You lived in Monrovia, right? Which sounds like its own country, but it's
Sure
like
did, man.
L.A., right?
It, it's it. Yeah, it's in there, dude. It's on the east side, man. It's on the east, just east of Pasadena. But before that, like I said, I commuted from Pasadena, Santa Monica, which was probably only about 30 miles, but it would take 2-3 hours. I started getting up earlier and earlier, and to the point where I'd get up at 4 a.m., drive there. It would take about an hour, 40 minutes, and sleep in my car until the place opened at 8 o'clock. So, yeah, dude, I put in a little. That was for about a year and a half. So I put in a little bit of time. It's my first job out of college.
But I don't understand how companies could expect to keep talent if that's what they have to go through to get to the job. That's nobody's going to last a very long time like that in that type of environment. I mean, you know what it takes to go 30 miles around here?
What does it take?
30 minutes at the most,
minutes.
Any time of day.
Right.
Pick a time of day.
That's so y'all aren't getting traffic yet out there. Too bad.
Not like that. Traffic, the bad traffic is on the interstate. Like if you're going to go 30 miles, you're going to be on the interstate. And so it's 65, 70 miles an hour all the time. Like it almost never, unless there's an accident, there's never any reason for it to slow down. There's never any congestion more than that. That's why I like to laugh and joke with people and tell them I'm closer to Atlanta than if you lived in Atlanta. Because I can get, we're south of Atlanta where there's not a ton of traffic. And so I can leave right here. I could set these headphones down, hop in my truck, and I would be in the terminal in Atlanta Airport in an hour and a half. And I don't even know how far that is. It's got to be 100 miles.
Really?
Yeah. So,
no, that's cool. Because even out here in Austin, and I'm north of Austin, traffic has picked up in recent years. And so a lot of people out here are like, man, traffic's getting really bad. And, it's kind of bad. I mean, it's not bad compared to LA, but, everywhere is experiencing this to some extent, and Austin's growing quickly. So I need to get out there, dude. That's the punchline. I need to make it out there, man, to Alabama. It's beautiful out there. It's very green, right?
I mean, this time of year, it's extremely green. I have to mow my grass every 2 days. Lots of pine trees, but it's just one of those things where the argument for not moving to a town like this is that there are not a ton of opportunities. And so with remote work, when that's no longer the case, why would you live in LA? I mean, unless you grew up there and you've got family there and you want to stay there, then hopefully your problems are alleviated as well, because everybody who moved there for opportunity moves out and the traffic goes down and everything gets less and you're better off for it. But for those people that are moving to big cities for opportunity, there's opportunity everywhere when it's remote.
Yeah,
so why would you? I can buy houses here for what a doghouse costs in LA. So why would you do it?
It's going to be really interesting to see also with the satellite internet that Elon Musk is doing, Starlink, which is going to provide really, I think, high bandwidth internet, right, to rural areas. I think that it's going to be, there's a lot of people that are thinking about leaving cities, right, not only because of remote work, but other things that are going on. And so it's really interesting, man. I mean, I think that really the demographics of cities are going to change significantly in the next 10 years or so. And so you might get a few more neighbors, out there. You might see traffic pick up.
Yeah, and raise my property value, but don't raise my property value. Don't bring a bunch of traffic. Okay, we got to have there's an in between there somewhere.
There's a happy medium. There's a happy
Yes.
medium that we can hit. Yeah.
Very much so. All right. So I think we've gotten through all of the conversation there. Jackie mentions drink a lot of water. You tend to not get up as much. It's a good point there as well. I do recommend, I don't know if setting a timer's right, but every once in a while stop, look at something further away than your screen, walk around, stretch a little bit. But other than that, Kalen, if you would, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they want to know more about building a shed in their backyard to work from.
Hey, you could check me out on Twitter at Kalen Jordan, KalenJordan, or LinkedIn. Pretty active in both places, and I would love to hear from you. So thanks, TJ. This is a lot of fun. Appreciate you.
Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on, man. This is always a good conversation. An hour goes extremely fast when I have Kalen on the live stream.
Man, I could have gone for another hour.
Well, we should have booked it. We should have planned it. The problem I have is that my air conditioning is not sufficient to keep up with this summer heat. That's why my face is starting to get shiny. And This is the bad time of the day. So if I go another hour, I'm liable to be full sweat in here.
I feel you.
So I got to turn the fan on, make a little more noise in here. Yep. But I appreciate everybody watching. And I'm not sure when the next live stream is planned, but we'll do an impromptu. We'll pop something up. So again, you could find me on Twitter at eCommerceaholic, as well as pretty much any social channel out there. So hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button on this video if you would. That always helps me out. We've got some interesting videos coming out next week. We're doing our series on BigCommerce versus Magento and trying to do some fun things there. So those should be dropping next week. Hit that subscribe button if that interests you, and I look forward to seeing you then.